erased as warnings, cities were destroyed to make examples, generations were enslaved so that wealth could flow to distant capitals. Religion, ideology, and destiny were often used to justify atrocities on a massive scale. It is important to understand that brutality does not always look the same. Sometimes it is loud, massacres, executions, and public terror. Other times it is quiet, starvation policies, cultural destruction, forced assimilation, and slow economic suffocation. But the outcome is the same: broken societies and silenced voices. In examining the most brutal empires in human history, the goal is not to rank suffering, nor to suggest that one people's pain outweighs another's. Instead, it is to reveal patterns, how absolute power tends to behave, how dehumanization enables cruelty, and how ambition repression. Assyrian kings believed that terror was not a byproduct of war, but its primary weapon. Their armies moved with calculated cruelty, and they made sure the world knew exactly what happened to those who resisted. Cities that defied Assyrian rule were not merely defeated, they were erased. Entire populations were slaughtered, and survivors were deported thousands of miles away, deliberately severed from their land, culture, and identity. Beneath this extreme violence was a cold logic. The Assyrians believed that short, overwhelming terror would prevent long-term resistance. If one city was annihilated completely, 10 others would surrender without a fight. Fear reduced the need for prolonged wars, making brutality a tool of efficiency rather than rage. The empire's system of mass deportation was equally devastating. Millions were forcibly relocated across vast distances, destroying ethnic continuity and ensuring dependence on Assyrian authority. Ironically, the Assyrian Empire's reliance on fear also sowed the seeds of its destruction. When its power weakened, the hatred it had cultivated united its enemies. In 612 BCE, the Assyrian capital of Nineveh was destroyed so completely that for centuries it was believed to be a myth. The Assyrian Empire proved a grim lesson that would echo through history. Terror can build an empire quickly, but it leaves nothing loyal behind. The Mongol Empire: conquest by annihilation. When the Mongols burst out of the Central Asian steppe in the early 13th century, the world had never seen warfare on such scale or with such devastating efficiency. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But its rapid expansion was fueled not only by superior mobility and strategy, but by a deliberate policy of annihilation. The Mongols understood psychology better than most of their enemies. They offered cities a simple choice: surrender immediately or be destroyed completely. If a city opened its gates, its people might live. If it resisted, the punishment was absolute. Entire populations were massacred, sometimes numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Cities that had taken centuries to build were reduced to ashes in days. Chroniclers of the time struggled to describe the scale of destruction. Rivers were said to run black with ink from destroyed libraries and red with blood from slaughtered civilians. In places like Nishapur, Baghdad, and Merv, death came so swiftly and so thoroughly that some regions took generations to recover, if they ever did. The Mongols made brutality a calculated demonstration. Survivors were often forced to march ahead of Mongol armies as human shields. Skilled artisans were spared only to be spared and relocated across the empire, while everyone else was deemed expendable. Terror traveled faster than the Mongol horses, and many cities surrendered without resistance simply from the stories alone. Yet Mongol cruelty was not driven by chaos or hatred, it was systematic. Mass killings were used to break resistance and ensure future compliance. Once conquered, regions that submitted fully could experience relative stability under Mongol rule. Trade routes reopened, and laws were enforced with harsh but consistent discipline. This duality makes the Mongol Empire particularly unsettling. It could bring order after total destruction. Peace was offered only after terror had done its work. The message was clear: survival depended entirely on obedience. The Mongol Empire reshaped the demographic. While the empire facilitated cultural exchange across continents, it did so on foundations of mass death. The Mongol Empire reminds us that efficiency in conquest does not lessen its horror. It only makes it became a lesson in collective punishment. Roman expansion was slow, methodical, and merciless. When cities resisted Roman rule, the response was rarely limited to military defeat. Entire populations could be enslaved, executed, or displaced. After the destruction of Carthage in 146 BCE, Rome not only annihilated its greatest rival, but erased it from existence. The city was burned, its people killed or sold into slavery, and its land symbolically cursed to prevent future settlement. Slavery was not a side effect of Roman conquest, it was its economic backbone. Millions were enslaved across the empire, torn from their homes and forced into mines, farms, and households where death rates were staggering. In Roman mines, particularly those extracting silver and gold, enslaved workers rarely survived more than a few years. Their lives were considered cheaper than the tools they used. Public violence was another pillar of Roman control. Gladiatorial games were not entertainment alone, they were demonstrations of state power. Executions, animal hunts, and staged deaths were spectacles designed to normalize brutality. Crowds cheered as human beings were dismembered, burned, or mauled, reinforcing the idea that life was expendable under Roman authority. Rebellion was met with exemplary punishment. After the slave uprising led by Spartacus, over 6,000 captured rebels were crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies left to rot as a warning. Crucifixion itself was engineered to maximize pain and humiliation, reserved for slaves and enemies of the state. Rome justified its violence through the language of order and civilization. Those who resisted were labeled barbarians, undeserving of mercy. Entire cultures were suppressed, languages erased, and local traditions replaced with Roman law and worship. Peace, in Roman terms, existed only after total submission. Roman Empire endured for centuries not because it was gentle, but because it was terrifyingly consistent. Its brutality was disciplined, bureaucratic, and legally sanctioned. And while its legacy shaped much of the modern world, it did so at the cost of countless lives, silenced beneath the banner of empire. The legacy of brutal empires. Empires rise with promises of order, security, and destiny. They fall, leaving behind silence, ruins, and unanswered grief. What unites the most brutal empires in human history is not geography, culture, or time period. It is the belief that power justifies suffering, that domination excuses cruelty, that some lives matter less than ambition. These empires did not rely on accidental violence. Their brutality was intentional, engineered, and normalized. Fear was a language spoken fluently by rulers who understood that terror could travel faster than armies. Entire populations were reduced to tools, labor to be exploited, bodies to be broken, cultures to be erased. And once violence became routine, it ceased to shock. It became policy. What is perhaps most unsettling is how familiar these patterns remain. Dehumanization, collective punishment, forced displacement, and ideological justification are not relics of ancient history. They are recurring strategies that reappear whenever unchecked power convinces itself that it is righteous. The empires may be gone, but the logic that built them never truly disappeared. History remembers conquerors by their victories, not by the victims they left behind. Names of emperors survive, while names of the dead are lost to time. But numbers alone cannot capture the pain. The child watching their city burn, the family marched into slavery, the culture erased so completely that only ruins remain. These human stories rarely make it into triumphal narratives. Yet there is a quiet truth buried beneath every fallen empire. Brutality does not create permanence. The Assyrians ruled through terror and vanished almost overnight. The Mongols shattered civilizations, but their empire fractured just as violently. Rome claimed eternity, yet collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Fear can enforce obedience, but it cannot inspire loyalty. Empires collapse because oppression breeds resistance, even if it takes generations. Trauma does not disappear, it passes forward. The cost of empire is never paid once. It is paid repeatedly, long after banners fall and capitals crumble. Understanding the brutality of past empires is not about condemning history. It is about recognizing warning signs. When power becomes absolute, when enemies are dehumanized,